Welcome to digital class. Dear children, today we are going to learn an important and interesting topic from statistics. So let us all begin the journey of statistics of today's session. So there was a discussion in a class between three students by mathematics teacher. The three students Reshma, Rohit and Srija were discussing the performance of the students in the formative assessment 1 of mathematics. The teacher was explaining about the marks secured by all the students of the class and Reshma, the student, she has taken the marks from the teacher and she tried to make a note of the marks in a tabular form. So the marks of the 24 students of the formative assessment 1 were formed as a table where the first column is the name and second column is the mark secured by the student. So she has prepared a table of the marks with the name and marks of all the 24 students as follows, as you see in the screen. Now the same marks have been put in a form of a simpler version here. All the 24 students marks have been put here and you are observing that there are three groups here, the first group and second group and third group. Now what is that you observed in this? You find that this as a data, is it not so children? Yes, this is the data of the marks of the student of 24 students of the formative assessment 1 of the class 10. Now let us see, is this data a group data or ungrouped data? Yes, it is going to be an ungrouped data, right? So once it is ungrouped data here, then what is it we can conclude from this data? We cannot say what exactly we can conclude from this data. So for that reason, Rohit from the same class, he has taken the marks from Reshma and he wanted to present the data of marks in a different format. So he has prepared a table where the marks have been put in the first column and the number of students in the second column. He classified the marks into four groups, 1 to 5 marks, 6 to 10 marks, 11 to 15 marks, 16 to 20 marks. Now children, is this data a ungrouped data or a grouped data? It can be called as a grouped data. Now see here, the first column you got the marks. What can you call the marks column as in general? We call it as class interval. Now the number of students, what you can call in general as, we call it as frequency. So you got a table of marks and number of students, the marks as a class interval and number of students as frequency, and this distribution is a frequency distribution table. Now you also observe that the marks are from 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15 and 16 to 20. Now in this, what do you mean by 6 to 10? The 6 to 10 is what is the class interval. What is 6 called in this? It is the lower limit of the class interval. What do you call 10 in this class interval? Yes, it is called as upper limit of the class interval. So you got 6 as a lower limit and 10 as the upper limit of the class interval. Now when you add up all the number of students, you get the sum of the values as equal to 24. So sum of the frequency values is 24. Now because there is no overlapping of the class intervals, we call this as an inclusive class. So it is a frequency distribution table with inclusive class. Srija of the same class, she has taken the table and she has prepared the table in different format. Why that she has prepared in different format? You observe that if at all you got a mark as 5.5, you cannot place in the either the first class interval or second class interval or any other place. So for that reason, Srija, she has taken another column where she has put class boundaries as one column here, taking the class limits as 1, 5, 6, 10, 11, 15 and 16, 20. Now what are these class boundaries, like why it is required, like how to find the class boundaries? So for that you take the average of the upper boundary of the first class and the lower boundary of the next class. So the average of these two, 5 plus 6 by 2 is 5.5. Now before 1 you have got a mark, no marks. So you take the lower boundary as 1 and that, and before that you don't have any mark, so you call it as 0. So 0 plus 1 by 2 is 0.5. So the first class boundary is 0.5 to 5.5. Now again the next class boundary, if at all you want to take, just you take the upper boundary of the first class and make it as lower boundary, and again take the average of 10 and 11. So 10 plus 11 by 2 is 10.5. Likewise the next one is 10.5 to 15.5, the next boundary is 15.5 to 20.5. So what is the difference you find in the Rohit's version and Srija's version? Rohit he has taken inclusive class, and Srija, she has taken exclusive class, where the number of students are remaining same. So this is what is the marks of the 24 students, where the class boundaries and number of students have been considered. So we can call this class boundaries and number of students table as frequency distribution table of exclusive class. Let us take one more example here. The one more student has written the marks and number of students like this. So he has put the marks in the first column and number of students in the second column. The marks he has classified as 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15 and 15 to 20. Do you find any difference between the earlier version and this version? Yes. You observe that the upper boundary of the first class and the lower boundary of the next class are remaining same. Likewise in 5 to 10 and 10 to 15, the 10 is repeated twice in 5 to 10 as well as in 10 to 15. In 10 to 15 and 15 to 20, 15 is repeated twice. Now what if a student gets 10 marks, whether you are going to put him in 5 to 10 marks class or 10 to 15 marks class? So whenever you got a situation like this, it is always in the second place. So second place where 10 is observed. So it is not in the interval 5 to 10, but it is in the interval 10 to 15. You are going to represent marks 10. Likewise, if you got a mark as 15, cannot be put in interval 10 to 15. It has to be put in the interval 15 to 20. So this type of representation of the marks and number of students, class interval number of students is what is called as exclusive class. So what is class length? The class length is nothing but the upper boundary minus lower boundary. So if you take the 5 to 10, the class interval as 5 to 10, the class length is going to be 10 minus 5. So 10 minus 5 is 5. So the class length of interval 5 to 10 is 5. One more concept called as class mark or mid value. So what is class mark or mid value? Class mark or mid value is the average of upper class limit and lower class limit of the class interval. So it is the average of upper class limit and lower class limit of the class interval. So when you take the class mark, it is nothing but upper class limit plus lower class limit whole divided by. So you take the interval as 5 to 10. So what can be the class mark? The class mark is the average of 5 and 10. So it is 5 plus 10 by 2, 5 plus 10 by 2 is 15 by 2, which is 7.5. So what is that you are going to do from all these? In your previous classes, you have learned about concepts of class boundaries, class limits, you have learned about frequencies, you have learned about range. So what is that you are going to learn from this? We are going to actually take up a value which is representing the entire set of values. So how is it you are going to represent the entire set of values with a single value? So whenever you are comparing the marks of the two classes here, so which class is performing better, which class is not performing better, if at all you want to compare, we need to have one central value to represent the entire data. So to find the central values, we are going to have three popular measures. One is called as arithmetic mean, second is mode, third is median. So these measures are going to represent one central value for the entire data. So what is this set of measures called as? They are called as measures of central tendency. So today we are going to learn about the first measure of central tendency, which is called as arithmetic mean. So the learning objectives of the today's class is find the mean of the given data, explain the terms used in the formula of arithmetic mean, use mean to analyze the data such as marks of the students, their height, etc. So what is arithmetic mean? So arithmetic mean, in your previous class you learned about the arithmetic mean as the ratio of sum of the observations to total number of observations. So you represent the mean as x bar. So x bar is equal to sum of the observations divided by total number of observations. If you got n observations, x1, x2, x3 goes on xn, then the mean x bar is equal to sum of the observations, which is x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus goes on plus xn, and number of observations is n. So mean x bar is equal to x1 plus x2 plus x3 goes on plus xn divided by n. So you can write in short as, so mean x bar is equal to sigma xi divided by n, where sigma is called as sum. Let us take an example of the marks of 24 students of the formative one of the class 10. So you have got the marks given like this of the 24 students. So let us find the mean of all the marks of the class here. So for that you have to find the sum of the observations. So how is it you find sum of the observations? Simply add all the observations. So you are going to add all the values. Sum of the values you are going to get it as 364. How many students are there here? You have got 24 students. So the value of n is 24. So the mean x bar is equal to sigma xi divided by n, which is nothing but 364 divided by 24. So which is nothing but 15.17. So the mean marks of the class 10 of the 24 students is around 15 marks. We observe that the mean x bar is 15.17, approximately it is 15. Now we observe from the data here, some of the values are repeated. So you see that 17 is repeated, 10 is repeated, 20 is repeated. So whenever you got same observation repeated and again, it becomes difficult to again add. So you got only 24 students, you could do it easily. If at all you have got say 200 students, you are going to find the mean of 200 students. It is very difficult to add all these students. So for that you introduce the concept of frequency, where the frequency is nothing but the number of times a particular observation is repeated. So the 17 is repeated 3 times, so frequency of 17 is 3. Okay children. Now if at all you just take observation as x1, x2 goes on up to xn, where x1 is repeated f1 number of times, x2 is repeated f2 number of times, x3 is repeated f3 number of times, xn is repeated fn number of times. That is, the frequency of observation x1 is f1, frequency of observation x2 is f2, frequency of observation x3 is f3, goes on, frequency of observation xn is equal to fn. So sum of the observations is nothing but x1 added f1 number of times, or simply f1 x1, plus x2 added f2 number of times, f2 x2, next f3 x3, it goes on fn xn. So sum of the observations is equal to f1 x1 plus f2 x2 plus f3 x3 goes on fn xn, and the number of observations is f1 plus f2 plus f3 goes on up to fn. So the mean you want to find out, it is going to be the ratio of the sum of the observations total by total number of observations. So, the arithmetic mean is x bar is equal to f1 x1 plus f2 x2 plus f3 x3 goes on fn xn divided by f1 plus f2 plus f3 goes on up to fn. So, we can write in a shorter notation x bar is equal to sigma fi xi divided by sigma fi. So, sigma fi xi is sum of observations and sigma fi is a number of observations. So, this fi is a frequency of the ith observation. The height in centimeters of 50 girls of class 10 was recorded by the physical director, and it is as follows. So, you got the first column as height in centimeters and second column as number of girls. So, as you know that the first column is nothing but the class interval and the second column is nothing but the number of girls. So, you observe that the class interval and number of girls are given. So, what you are going to do is you are going to find out the mean of this data. So, the height in centimeters of 50 girls are being taken. The first column you are going to introduce the class interval, second column you are going to put frequency. Now, you are going to add two more columns, the third column called as class mark and the fourth column is fi xi. So, the class interval values are given as 135 to 140 so on. The frequency values are given as 4, 7, 18, 11, 6 and 4. Now, to get the class mark, children, how is it you get the class mark? Can you recollect? So, you are going to take the class mark or mid value as the average of the lower limit and upper limit. So, the average of 135 and 140 is 135 plus 140 by 2. So, 135 plus 140 by 2 will be 137.5. Likewise, when you take 140 and 145, 140 plus 145 by 2 is going to be 142.5. 145 plus 150 by 2 is going to be 147.5. Next is 150 plus 155 by 2, which is 152.5. 155 plus 160 by 2 is 157.5. 160 plus 165 by 2 is 162.5. So, you got the class mark of all the class intervals. Now, you are going to multiply the frequency with the class mark. So, the frequency is given as 4 and the class mark is given as 137.5. You are going to multiply these two, you got 550.5. Likewise, 7 into 142.5 is 997.5. 18 into 147.5 is 2655. 11 into 152.5 is 1677.5. 6 into 157.5 is 945.5. Now, we are going to add the sum of the values of frequency and sum of the fi xi values. We got sigma fi as 50 and sigma fi xi is 7475. So, the sum sigma fi is 50 and sigma fi xi is 7475. Calculate the mean of this data. So, sum of the fi xi values is sigma fi xi, which is 7475, and sum of the frequency values is sigma fi, which is 50. So, the arithmetic mean x bar is equal to sigma fi xi divided by sigma fi, which is nothing but 7475 divided by 50. When you calculate it, it is going to come as 149.5. So, the mean height of 50 girls of the class 10 is 149.5 centimeters. So, this method of finding the mean is called as the direct method. So, children, I hope that you have understood this method. So, what are the problem you have faced in solving? You found that the calculation of fi and xi was lengthy. So, you got fi value and xi value multiplied and you got all in decimals, and the value of sigma fi xi is 7475. So, the calculation was a little lengthier in the direct method. So, to reduce calculations part, we are going to introduce one more method called as assume mean method. So, by the name assume mean method, you are going to make an assumption of the mean. You are going to make an assumption of the mean. So, we follow some basic steps in the assume the mean method. So let us employ the following steps. Step 1, choose one among the class mark or mid values xi and assume mean. Let us employ the following step. Step 1, choose one among the class mark or mid values xi as assume mean and denote it as a. Step 2, find deviation of a from each of the xi and denote it as di. So what is di? Di is nothing but xi minus a. Step 3, find the value of fi into di of each and every class and find the sum of the fi di values, that is you are going to find sigma fi di. And finally, to find the arithmetic mean, we use the formula x bar is equal to a plus sigma fi di by sigma fi, where di is equal to xi minus a. So we take the same example what we have taken earlier and try to do the problem with this assume mean method. So for that you take the first column as class interval Ci, second column as frequency Fi, third column as mid value Xi, and introduce two more columns, the deviation Di is equal to Xi minus a, and finally Fi into Di. So we have got the class intervals already given in the problem, frequency already given in the problem. So we have found out the xi values or the mid values in the previous problem. We just take the values 135 plus 140 by 2, which is 137.5, 140 plus 145 by 2, 142.5, 145 plus 150 by 2, 147.5, 150 plus 155 by 2, 152.5, 157.5, and finally 162.5. Now we are going to make an assumption of mean. So the rule 1 says that you are going to assume one among these values of xi as assume mean. It is not compulsory that you take a particular value here, we can choose any value, but it is always convenient to choose one of the middle value. So here you are having the value of xi given moving from 137.5 to 162.5. So you can have any of the middle values as assume means. Either you can take a is equal to 147.5 or a is equal to 152.5, or any other value also you can take. Here we have taken the value of a as 147.5. So let us take the deviations, calculate the deviation values. So 147.5 minus 147.5, it is going to be 0. 142.5 minus 147.5, it is minus 5. 137.5 minus 147.5, which is minus 10. 152.5 minus 147.5, which is 5. 157.5 minus 147.5, which is 10, and 162.5 minus 147.5, which is 15. So you are finding the deviation of all the values. Now what is the next step? You are going to find out the frequency values, multiply with the di value. So multiply the fi and di value. So the fi value is given as 4 and di value is given as minus 10 in the first class interval. So 4 into minus 10, which is going to be minus 40. 7 into minus 5 is going to be minus 35. 18 into 0 is 0. 11 into 5 is 55. 6 into 10 is 60. 4 into 15 is 60. Now you are going to add up all the frequency values and add up all the fi di values. So sigma fi value is 50, the number of students, and sigma fi di, when you add up minus 40, minus 35, 0, 55, 60 and 60, you get sigma fi di value as 100. So after getting the sigma fi and sigma fi di, what is the next step you have got, children? You have got the formula to be applied. So let us try to apply the formula. So what is given here? The sum of the fi di value, sigma fi di is 100, and sum of the frequencies, sigma fi is 50. So the formula is, arithmetic mean is x bar is equal to a plus sigma fi di by sigma fi. So what is the assumed mean a here? We have taken it as 147.5, and what is the value of sigma fi di? It is 100, and what is sigma fi? It is 50. So when you apply here 147.5 plus 100 by 50, 100 by 50 is 2 here, so 147.5 plus 2 is 149.5. So by assuming method, mean height is 149.5. So when you compare the earlier method and this method, in this method the calculation has become comparatively easier by introducing a simple term called as assume mean. Now what if at all you want to make the calculation much more easier? So how is it you do the calculation much more easier? For knowing about that, we observe the previous table. In the previous table, what you got? The deviation di values as multiple of 5. So you got it as minus 10, minus 5, 0, 5, 10, 15. So we need to recognize that, and we need to go for the next method called as step deviation method. So in this step deviation method, first step is going to be choose one among the mid values xi as a assume mean and denote it as a. Find the deviation of a from each of the xi and denote it as di. So di is nothing but xi minus a. The third step we are going to take is divide each of these deviations with the class size. So the class size you have taken it as h and denote it as ui. Divide each of these deviations with class size and denote it as ui. So ui is equal to xi minus a divided by h. So ui is equal to di by h. So find the value of fi into ui of each and every class and find sigma fi ui. Finally, to find arithmetic mean, we use the formula x bar is equal to a plus sigma fi ui divided by sigma fi into h, where ui is equal to xi minus a by h. Now what is that you observe here? This method and the previous method. In the previous method, you have taken x bar is equal to a plus sigma fi di by sigma fi. Here you have taken sigma fi ui. The ui is having xi minus a by h. You got a denominator h and you got into h. So only for the calculation purpose, you are multiplying and dividing by h. So this process is almost similar to the earlier method, assume mean method. So it is better that you use this method as compared to the assume mean method, because the calculations are going to be much more easier by this method. The first column is the class interval, the second column is the frequency, third column is the mid value, the fourth column di is xi minus a. The first four columns are as it is same. Now introduce the fifth column, ui is equal to xi minus a divided by h, and finally multiply the frequency fi with the ui values. So the class interval values are known to us, the frequency values are known to us. Now the mid values you have calculated in the first two methods. We just copy it as it is here. Now the deviations you have taken it in the previous method. For that you have taken assume mean as 147.5. So you got the deviations as minus 10, minus 5, 0, 5, 10, 15. So all these four columns are same as the previous method. Now we are going to deduce the value of h. Now observe the class size. So the class interval 135 to 140, the length is 5. Or you say the deviations they are all multiples of 5. So you take the value of h as 5. So choose h is equal to 5. So the first term you divide 0 by 5, which is 0, minus 5 by 5, which is minus 1, minus 10 by 5, which is minus 2, 5 by 5 1, 10 by 5 2, and 15 by 5 3. So the ui values you got it by taking deviations by the class size. So you got the values as minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Now the next step is going to be multiplying the fi values with the ui values. So 4 into minus 2 is minus 8, 7 into minus 1 is minus 7, 18 into 0 is 0, 11 into 1 is 11, 6 into 2 is 12, 4 into 3 is 12. Now when you add up all the frequency values, you got it as 50, and when you add up sigma fi ui values, you are going to get it as 20. So when you compare the earlier method and this method, the calculations have become much more easier. So you got the values very fast. Now what you observed, the sum of the FI/UI values is sigma FI/UI, which is 20, the sum of the frequencies is sigma FI, which is 50. So x bar is equal to A plus sigma FI/UI by sigma FI into H. So you have taken the value of A as 147.5, the value of H as 5, sigma FI/UI is 20 and sigma FI is 50. So apply the values here. So 147.5 plus 20 by 50 into 5, which is 147.5 plus 2, which is 149.5. So therefore by step deviation method, the mean height is 149.5. So for better understanding of the topic, please visit the official website of SCRT Telangana and download the worksheets. Thank you.
ఆ చదువులమ్మ నేరుగా ప్రతి ఇంటి గడప